Today, we're going to break down the reasoning process using a historical example, the Stamp Act of 1765. It was a law passed by Britain to tax the American colonies, but created more problems than solutions, eventually leading to revolution. But what did it actually do? The Stamp Act taxed all printed materials in the colonies. Its purpose for the British government was to raise money to pay off debts from the 7 Years' War and maintain British troops in the colonies. After the war, Britain was in debt and viewed the American colonies as a potential profitable source of revenue. The tax was 1 cent for every printed document, a seemingly small amount, but the colonies had no input or representation in Parliament regarding this decision. This lack of representation became a central grievance, giving a sense of injustice among colonists. The disruption caused by the Stamp Act was bad. It ignited widespread protests and organized resistance, leading to the formation of groups such as the Sons of Liberty, who took it up themselves to make sure the colonists were heard. These groups not only protested against the Stamp Act, encouraged unity among the colonies, as they began to collaborate in their efforts to resist British policies. Organized efforts boycott of British goods. This collective action not only disrupted daily life in the colonies, but also led to the beginning of American identity, as people began to see themselves as not British. As the anger over the Stamp Act grew, it also resulted in significant political mobilization. Town meetings became platforms for discussing next movements, and pamphlets circulated widely, spreading revolutionary ideas. Notable figures such as Patrick Henry and Samuel Adams emerged as leaders in the resistance, articulating the colonies' voices. The act also deepened the difference between the colonies and Britain, as many colonists felt increasingly alienated from a government that imposed taxes without their consent. This growing discontent eventually contributed to the development of a more organized and strategic opposition, setting the stage for future confrontations that would ultimately lead to the American Revolution. Now let's relate this to the actual assignment. A comparison we can make is between the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts of 1767. Both acts were designed to raise revenue from the American colonies, but there are few differences. The Stamp Act was a direct tax on printed materials, whilst the Townshend Acts placed taxes on imported goods. Being indirect. Colonists viewed both acts as violations of their rights, as they were passed without their consent, and in both situations the colonists responded with protests and boycotts. One piece of info we should expand on is the cause. Britain's desperate need for money after the 7 Years' War saw the colonies as a good source of revenue. So, in 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act, which imposed a direct tax on all printed materials in the colonies, everything from newspapers to playing cards. A short-term effect was the economic boycott of British goods. The colonists refused to buy British products, which hurt British merchants, leading to the long-term effect of colonists identifying themselves as other than British. Let's summarize everything we've learned. The Stamp Act of 1765 imposed a tax on all printed materials in the American colonies, aimed at raising revenue to help Britain pay off debts from the costly 7 Years' War and maintain British troops in the colonies. While the tax itself was small, it was imposed without any colonial representation in Parliament, sparking widespread resentment and protests. Groups like the Sons of Liberty organized resistance, boycotting British goods and fostering unity among the colonies. This marked the beginning of a shared colonial identity and deepened the divide between Britain and the colonies, eventually leading to the American Revolution.